The Early Weigh-In podcast is back this Saturday. Head to Perth, Australia for UFC 305. Excellent fight in our main event, man. Middleweight strap up for grabs. We got the champion, Dricus Plessis, making his second title defense, I do believe, against Israel Adesanya, former champion, longtime reigning champion. Excited for that fight. Co-main event, we dropped down to flyweight for Kai Kara-France taking on Steve Erceg. It's 12 total fights, man. Won't waste too much time. Let you recap what was a losing week, I think, from us both. Still in a rut, man. Trying to climb our way out, but still got a lot of time left, man, to turn this year around. So let you recap that. We'll jump into this pay-per-view.
Yeah, a little bit of a slump for sure. We both tried to pick our spots last week and ended up only hitting one bet apiece. Yeah. We'll take a look over at your card first. Over at your card first, we both had Talita Alencar over Stephanie Luciano. Couldn't get her takedowns going like we thought she would. Bad bet from both of us, I feel like. Barlow to win and Grigori to win. It was low-level fights, you know. Barlow didn't even cover his price tag.
Grigori, that was like one of the most piss-poor performances I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, that's tough, dude. It's sad because he comes out of such a good camp. You'd think that he'd be able to put on a better performance, but minus 3.26 units. Looking over at my card, I had a bet on Marcin Tybura. That didn't look good. Damon Jackson didn't look good. Talita Alencar, already said, didn't look good. Fight doesn't go the distance, and Jarno Aarons, Yusuf Salal. I actually felt the best about this one. But I didn't hit it hard. I didn't hit it hard at all. It stunk. I knew that if Yusuf was going to cover that price tag, you needed to get the finish. So, I hit that. That was the only bet that hit. And then fight doesn't go the distance in the Gutierrez-Kang Lee fight. Honestly, I'm kind of blanking remembering that fight. Was it even close? Do you remember?
Not really. A lot more grappling than I had anticipated.
Yeah. Minus 3.05 units. And like you said, both kind of in a slump right now, hoping to get back on track for this pay-per-view.
Yep.
We start off the night in the flyweight division where we have a debutant, Stewart Nicoll, taking on Jesus Aguilar. Stewart Nicoll, a lot of hype coming out of him, man. He's a hometown guy, 8-0, taking on Jesus Aguilar. Notoriously tough guy. Only guy to finish him in the UFC is Tatsuro Taira. I think that this kind of is a winnable fight for Stewart Nicoll. I think the UFC is obviously trying to do him a favor, bringing him into the UFC on such a big pay-per-view card, opening up the card. He seems to be finishing all of the people on the regional scene. He does seem to grapple a whole lot more, and I feel like Jesus Aguilar, that's kind of been his holes in the past. I'm not really sure that Nicoll has shown me enough to where I feel like he's going to be able to exploit Aguilar and get the finish when he takes him to the ground. But I do think that he's probably going to do enough to edge it out. I've got overs on this fight. I think that Nicoll wins this, but I do think that it's probably pretty close, a close contested fight. But Nicoll will be the pick. I don't think I'm going to get around to putting him in parlays, but he is the side for me.
Yeah, man, we see the fight extremely similar. When I look at the guys who he's beaten on the regional scene, doing a good job doing it, finishing majority of them, but they're pretty low-level guys. I don't know how he's going to transition to the UFC, but I do think he's going to win this fight. Like you said, when you look at what Jesus Aguilar struggled with, been submitted twice in his career, should have lost that Madonka fight due to being out-grappled. I think Nicoll's a pretty solid grappler, man. Another thing with Jesus Aguilar, he kind of talked about being like a setup fight for Nicoll. You know, they've got the Sphere, Noche UFC, where they're telling the history of Mexican sports, and any Mexican UFC fighter that I feel like is not on that card is pretty expendable to them. You know, they've already fed him to Tatsuro Taira. Now here they are flying him across the world to take on a debutant, Stewart Nicoll, as well. So got to think the UFC knows what they're doing here. Likely going to leave him out of a parlay myself. Stewart Nicoll is going to be the pick for me. I do have 1.5 units on our next fight. I took Song Kenan, kind of waited a little bit all week, got a minus 175 after he was minus 225 opening in the week, taking on Ricky Glenn here. Glenn is going up to 170. I'm not really sure, unless there's some inside information. I am not really too sure who is betting Ricky Glenn this week. I think he's far past it, looks stuck in the mud, looks slow, coming off TKO losses. And Song is still kind of showing me that he can compete with prospects like Rolando Bedoya, Ian Gary, showing while the volume may be low, he's pretty accurate. He still has power. When I was kind of doing my research on this fight, I was kind of like, this fight kind of is throwing me off a little bit. Kenan Song, Ricky Glenn, none of them Australian ties. But when I kind of looked at it, you look in the past, Kenan Song's fought in Brad Riddell, fought in Israel Adesanya. So he's done some regional work and stuff over here in Australia. So maybe has a little bit of ties there as well. Think they're kind of flying Ricky Glenn over here to get a loss. So on the Kenan Song money line at minus 175, and likely going to be a TKO win for him in my eyes.
Yeah, it's an odd move at 35 years old. It's not just a 10-pound increase; it's a 15-pound one to 170, and he's not going against a small guy in Kenan Song. If Kenan had shown better fight IQ in the past, I think I'd be more liable to trust him in this spot. But I do think that he's going to be significantly bigger, younger, hits harder, and Ricky Glenn showing some signs of chin issues and just, decline in general. So, yeah, Kenan Song's the pick, but I wouldn't be surprised if Song lost this fight. Ricky Glenn's competed with guys like Grant Dawson, who I, probably hold, higher than Kenan Song. So that's at least something to point out. Like, I feel like if he can compete with Dawson on a given night, I feel like he can compete with Kenan Song if he doesn't get starched. So it's just a pass fight for me all around. But Kenan Song, yeah, I would slightly lean him. Moving up the card, down a weight class to the lightweight division, Tom Nolan taking on Alex Reyes. I mean, Tom Nolan's 24 years old. He's huge for the division, 7-1, but we've seen him get starched before already in the UFC. And I do feel like this line is just insane. Reyes hasn't shown us anything since a 6-year layoff to want to bet him, but simply the fact that this is an MMA fight and Alex Reyes has at least taken over about a year off from that knockout, I feel like plus 750 is warranted to take a stab. I've made worse bets, and Tom Nolan, really is not a minus 1,200 fighter. Probably a hedge whenever the lines come out. Like, let's see, like a Nolan round 1 is even money. So I feel like you could just play Nolan round 1 and then another unit on Tom or on Reyes, and then you're free rolling for plus 650. Yeah. I think that there's plenty of opportunity for a banana slip to happen from a minus 1,200 24-year-old. Give me Alex Reyes plus 750.
What percentage does this fight end in round 1?
I don't know, 85?
Minus 168 to not start round 2, only like 62%. So that's a play that I've considered. I think the fight ends in round 1 at a very, very heavy clip.
Yeah.
I wish there wasn't so many red flags on Alex Reyes' side. I wish he wasn't 12 years older, had the injuries, been knocked out in his last 2. Because I'm with you, man. Tom Nolan's not a minus 1,300 fighter. We've seen him chin checked by Nicholas Mata, and even in the Victor Martinez fight, he kind of rushed things, left his head on the center line, and got caught and put on his butt there a second too. So I think he's liable to get caught. I wish you the best if you bet Alex Reyes. I can't pull the trigger on him, man. I think there's too much physical difference, youth. I feel like Tom Nolan's gonna put him away pretty easy, if I'm being honest with you. But I might find myself when that doesn't start round 2 at minus 168 on FanDuel. Moving at the card, we can go to Jack Jenkins versus Herbert Burns fight. I've got a couple bets on this fight. I feel like it's one of the more binary fights. When Herbert Burns fights, I'm always trying to take those round 2 and 3 stabs on his opponents, which I did here. I bet Jack Jenkins round 2 for a half unit, round 3 for a quarter unit. I think it's plus 270 and plus 500 on those odds there. I do feel like he's coming back from injury. might take it a little slow, might be a little hesitant. He's got to be mindful of the takedowns while Herbert Burns is fresh. So I do feel like Jack Jenkins' finish upside is in the second and third round where he's able to push that pace. The leg kicks might start adding up. But again, I kind of talked about the dangers of Herbert Burns early. When you can get someone as dangerous as he is on the mat early in a fight at plus 2,400 and plus 3,300 for rounds 1 and round 2 subs, I was happy to take at least a small shot on those because I feel like that is all of his win condition. But yeah, man, I think he's a quitter. I think as soon as this fight starts getting out of round 1, I think Jack Jenkins is going to put it on him, likely find a TKO in 2 or 3. So I'm out less than a unit if Jack Jenkins gets the round 1 knockout, but I do think it comes later in this fight. Jack Jenkins is going to be the pick for me.
Yeah, Jenkins is the pick for me as well. Herbert melts pretty early. Only way I see you losing that bet is if Jenkins gets the round 1 finish, which hasn't happened against a guy with a winning record in his professional career. So, I think you're pretty safe, but Herbert quitting quicker than ever wouldn't surprise me at all. I'm surprised he's still getting shots in the UFC, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Moving up the card down a few weight classes to the women's flyweight division, Casey O'Neill taking on Luana Santos. I think that this will be a close competitive fight. Luana Santos, I tend to favor her. She's got a judo background. I do think that she'll probably wind up in top position a little more often when the fight does go to the ground. Both girls, pretty green, pretty low level. Not a fight I'm going to get involved with, but I would have to lean Luana Santos. Like I said, I just think that she'll probably end up in better position throughout the fight, and we'll probably get the nod on the judges' scorecards.
I kind of feel like Luana Santos is the flavor of the month with the UFC right now. This will be her 4th fight in a calendar year. She's 3-0 with a couple finishes, a couple quick round 1 finishes. She's real pretty out here twerking. I just kind of feel like she's the flavor of the month, and everybody's kind of low on Casey O'Neill coming off of 2 losses, and I just don't see it that way. I think it absolutely is a 50-50 fight at worst. I think Casey O'Neill is the better striker here of the 2. I think she's proven to have better cardio of the 2. I really favor round 3 to go to Casey O'Neill at a large clip. I see Luana Santos fight with Stephanie Egger, and sure is up a weight class. She misses weight, but there's evidence there of her slowing down in fights. And now she's got to take it on short notice, fly all the way to Australia, cut the weight and things again. A lot of things favor Casey O'Neill. Another thing, kind of like Kenan that I was speaking on earlier, doing some research. Casey O'Neill from Perth, Australia. Her dad actually owns Eternal MMA, which is the fighting organization in Perth, Australia. So I'm kind of like thinking if this is a close fight, then maybe she kind of gets some hometown love here. So I think it goes to a really close decision. Happy to be on the plus money side on the Casey O'Neill. So I think it's 1.5 units on her at plus 120. Anything you want to add?
No, I mean, when you said it, I was thinking in my head, like, Casey O'Neill was the flavor of the month 2 years ago before she got exposed. She kind of was what the UFC was pushing, and I just haven't seen the progression in her career to make me want to bet her here. I'm not saying that it's like a bad shot, because truthfully, this level of women's fights, you want to take the dog just about every time, even though this year it hasn't really worked out like that. We saw a couple stats on Twitter, but I think generally speaking, that's probably a plus EV bet. So I'm not mad at it at all.
Moving on up the card, man, Josh Culibao taking on Ricardo Ramos. Seen quite the line movement here. A lot of love coming in on the Ricardo Ramos side, bringing the line in a bunch. I think Ramos is a quitter. I'm just going to be plain and simple, man. I think when he's on the offensive and he looks good, he's got his confidence is at an all-time high. But as soon as things start to go south for him, I think he folds up when he's willing to quit. Some of the guillotine attempts that he's been put in, he doesn't even seem to try to fight to get out of them, man. He's kind of quick to give up. I don't like that. I think Josh Culibao is the exact opposite, someone that you have to put away to get him out of there. I think he will absolutely fight for your dollar. Much more durable. He's a little bit weak to the body, but I think as far as who's going to take shots better, I think Josh Culibao's got that in the bag. I think he's got much better cardio. He might not be as dynamic of a striker. You'll see Ricardo Ramos, switch in some of those spinning elbows that he's gotten a couple finishes with. But I think Josh Culibao's got the volume upside, is probably the better striker. Again, going back to the cardio, I trust that more. I'm on the Culibao side this week, man. I'm not on the Ricardo Ramos side. I don't really get the love. It's Culibao or pass for me.
Yeah, so Culibao, like the more that I look at it, he's probably going to be the play of the week for me, dude. I've bet Culibao in the past. I think his last 2 fights I've bet him. I bet Culibao by submission in the past. He hasn't hit me those yet, but I know he's got it in him, and this might be the perfect fight for it. I do not hold Ricardo Ramos high at all. I think Culibao still has a lot more potential as a fighter to grow. And I certainly like his mindset whenever he's in the octagon better. I think we're getting a pretty forgiving price tag right here. Like, I know he's coming off of a couple losses, but he was damn near evens against Lerone Murphy. I think this is a pretty much a gift of a line. If it continues to go down, I might hit it harder. But as of now, you can expect a bet from me later on in the week on Josh Culibao for sure. Moving on to the prelim headliner, Junior Tafa taking on Valter Walker. This is a tough one, man. This is a tough one to call because it's really low level. We just saw Valter Walker come in as a 2.5 to 1 favorite over Lucas Bresky and kind of drop the ball. Prior to that, we hadn't really been sure what level of competition he was seeing, and the first time that he gets kind of UFC caliber, he drops the ball, and that's just not what you want to see. On the other side, you got the younger brother of Justin Tafa, Junior Tafa, who has gone 1-2 in the UFC, with his only win being over Parker Porter. Mo Usman and Marcus Rogerio de Lima, actually, not the worst fighters. There are worse heavyweights out there, i.e. Lucas Bresky, and I could see how Junior Tafa is a slight favorite here. If Valter Walker can mix in the grappling, if he comes in better shape into this fight, I could see this line kind of swing in the opposite direction. Junior Tafa has shown us, like most heavyweight fighters coming out of this area, they don't grapple. They can't grapple very well. And I think that he's probably in the same boat, and it's probably not going to get better. So for the time being, I'm going to say Junior Tafa. I haven't seen what I wanted to see out of Valter Walker to bet him, but there are some holes in Tafa's game, so I wouldn't be surprised if they get exposed. I'm picking Tafa, though.
First disagreement of the card here. I'm on the Valter Walker side. It's a bet that I've been staring at all week. I said it last week with Carl Williams having the clearest path to victory on a card, and it not coming through against the Janata Denise. Valter Walker's got the clearest path to victory of anybody on this card, man. He's a mountain of a man. He looks in much better shape online than he came in his UFC debut. And I think he's got clear wrestling takedown upside. And, Lucas Bresky made Carl Williams work a shit ton too, getting up for multiple takedown attempts. I really do think that if Junior Tafa gets put on his back by a guy who's as big as Valter Walker is, I feel like the round could be over with. Just being honest with you, man. And Valter Walker's younger, more fight experience, double the fights as a younger guy in the room with Johnny Walker, Bogdan Guskov. I don't know, man. To see him like a minus 300 in a debut to now plus money with an even more clearer path to victory, never being finished before. I missed plus 115. I think it could still be hanging out there somewhere, but it might be enough to entice me to get on the Valter Walker side before Saturday. So gonna find myself on that, but it is very low level heavyweights. Nice little prelim main event though. Kicking off the main card at 170, Jingliang taking on Carlos Prates. It's an absolute killer fight, man. I like Carlos Prates in terms of watching him fight in the cage. His Muay Thai is nasty, and his length and things just enables him. The knees up the middle, the left hand. The dude's got unreal power. A little slick off of his back too. But there is holes in this guy's game. He's been finished numerous times by TKO, by submission. This will be the first time he's on a pay-per-view, kicking the main card off, flying across the world. He's taking on a really experienced guy in Jingliang, who I think is a lot more well-rounded, who has the ability to mix in some wrestling, who has just as big power on the feet. I think is a little bit more proven in the cardio as well. I think at plus 280, you've said it before, I've made worse bets than, a guy who is plus 280, and it's Carlos Prates' hardest test to date. Biggest red flag for me is the injury that's kept Jingliang sidelined for a little bit with the vertebrae, spine injury, whatever it is. But if he's cleared, doctor's letting him fight, I'll take plus 280 in a fight like this, man.
Yeah, I don't know, dude. I think that the line's wide, yes, but Jingliang, he's good for maybe one takedown a fight, and I'm not convinced that he's going to be able to hold him down on the ground long enough to score significant time or control in the round. And then I don't think that he has a good enough submission threat to really make Prates pay in the times that he does get it to the ground. When he's on the feet, I think he's at a pretty significant disadvantage. But I would agree that, high-level experience, I give it to Jingliang, at least an MMA experience. And then as far as the line goes, I do think it's a little off. I would favor Prates here. I think he should be closer to like a minus 180. But so I'm not upset at the stab at Jingliang Li. I just fail to see where he actually takes advantage of it if he's not able to control him on the ground for a significant portion of the time. See, going up to the heavyweight division, Tuivasa taking on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. This is, a weird one where I feel like Rozenstruik is a pretty one-dimensional fighter, and you never like to see a price tag like minus 230 on somebody who only really has one path to victory when he fights. Mm-hmm. But he is up against somebody in Tuivasa who doesn't have the option of really taking this fight to the ground and exposing any of those holes. So I do think that the price is justified. I think in a pure kickboxing match, I'm going to take the pure kickboxer in Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And I think that Tuivasa could find himself in some trouble because he is pretty open. He has some holes defensively, especially when he's trying to land power shots. And I think that check left hook could slip in for Rozenstruik on one of those entries of Tuivasa. So give me Rozenstruik. I don't like the price tag, but I do think that he wins this fight.
Don't have too much differing thoughts, man. I feel like Tuivasa on the 4-fight losing streak finished in all 4 of them. Feel like his foot's out the door, man. We even saw him, I think, prior to the Tuivasa fight it was on WWE, drinking beers and things. It just doesn't seem like he's as motivated as he used to be. I'm sure he gets paid quite well, not having to travel too far here and not getting somebody that's going to wrestle him. So I guess he's got his best shot to win a fight, but you're right, man. I feel like he's standing across a guy who's much faster, much sharper, who's probably going to catch him with, you said, a short check left hook. I think a jab on a fight or on a time where Ty's loading up to throw one of those big overhands and just going to get caught coming in. So I see it pretty similar. Don't know how much more I could add to it. Jairzinho Rozenstruik's aside for me. Will not be touching the line, though, either. Both of us do have a play here. Going down to the men's lightweight division, Mateusz Gamrot taking on Dan Hooker. I like Gamrot. I know a lot of people don't like his style of fight. I do. I love a guy who can push a pace like that, can wrestle relentlessly like that. I do wish while he was on top, he was a little bit more dangerous. I wish he'd throw in some more ground and pound, maybe hunt for submissions. But I think he's an elite fighter and one of the best lightweights on the planet. I can't necessarily say the same for Dan Hooker, who's been in quite a few wars, getting up there in age a little bit. But I think this fight is a little tricky for Mateusz Gamrot. I think the length of Dan Hooker could cause a little bit of trouble. I think the way Dan Hooker throws his shots up the middle a whole lot, particularly the knees and things, could cause Gamrot a little trouble. Gamrot's been dropped in like 4 or 5 fights in the UFC. He's somehow managed to win like every one of them, but he's getting dropped in the fights, and I feel like one time it's going to bite him in the ass here. and it might be Dan Hooker. So I know you like some violence here. I decided to take plus 165 on the Dan Hooker finish only. I don't see a ton of potential on a Gamrot finish. I feel like if a Gamrot wins, he's going to land 11 takedowns or something here and just do too much on the scorecards. But I think a lot of the finishing potential lies on the Dan Hooker side. So I opted to play it that way, hoping we both cash a ticket, maybe with a Dan Hooker finish. But I know you like some violence here, man. Ultimately, I think Gamrot decision probably happens more than anything else. I think that's the most likely outcome. But I like Dan Hooker. I think he's a little bit live to finish this fight.
Yeah, so like you said, I like the violence in this fight. I think that there's plenty of potential for Gamrot to take him to the ground and kind of expose him a little bit, finish him in the Kimura. He got Jeremy Stephens in. He's gotten 3 finishes in the UFC, and I feel like he's had a unfortunate run against some really high-level competition that hasn't really been – they're giving him the opportunity to showcase the best of his skills. I feel like right now, considering he was a backup fighter for a title fight already, and now he's getting a number 6 ranked guy coming off of a win, there is some pressure for him to get a highlight finish so that he can kind of cement himself as the next title challenger. And I think that probably weighs heavy on his side as well. I at least assume that he's aware of the fact that the UFC isn't really trying to give him the title shot, and that finishing somebody, especially in this, pay-per-view slot, would certainly put him in the talks more than if he gets yet another decision. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think that there's a lot of potential just for the mindset of Gamrot coming into this fight to get the finish. And then on top of all that, yeah, he gets a little predictable with his takedown entries, and Dan Hooker throws knees up the middle, and he's always down to bang. He does kind of give up has a lot of defensive holes, and I feel like Mateusz Gamrot could probably pick that apart. I think Dan Hooker, I don't know what's up with him, but in the last year, he's completely inked up his body. Like mindset-wise, I'm not really sure where he's at in his career. He's kind of had some tough losses recently, and I think that he's probably looking for a finish here in what would a lot of people consider a hometown fight. I understand that it's not necessarily is it technically a hometown fight, or is he's from New Zealand, so
I think he's technically New Zealand, but
yeah, so he's flying 5 hours or whatever it is. But still, I think that he's probably gonna want to die on his shield in this spot as well. So give me the under 2.5 for plus 215. It was plus 220 on DraftKings earlier this week, and I really liked it then, and now it's plus 195 there. So when FanDuel opened it at plus 215, I figured I might as well go ahead and jump on it. I could talk myself into even another unit on it because I do feel like there's gonna be a finish in this fight, and we're getting an awesome price tag for it.
I like it.
Let's see, co-main event, 125 pounds. This is for, I don't know, possibly a title eliminator bout. The division's pretty wide open. It's Kai Kara-France taking on Steve Erceg, who is coming off with a decision loss against Alexander Pantoja. He fought Pantoja really hard, 2-2 going into the 5th, and Pantoja was able to kind of eke it out. Maybe some questionable IQ moves on the Erceg side, but it was his first time in a position like that. So, he's still how old is Erceg? Is he 30 yet?
Yeah, I think so. 31.
No, he's 29 years old, so still a lot of time to improve. He's looked awesome outside of that. I feel like Kai Kara-France is going to give him the fight that he wants. Kai Kara-France, a little undersized for the division, in my opinion, always has been. I feel like he kind of lacks the diversity in his game to be able to find ways to get inside of the range of Steve Erceg, and I think that he'll probably fall victim to a jab over 3 rounds. The fact that this is only 3 rounds, I like. I think that the Erceg decision is pretty likely. I think that there's a high likelihood that he just completely outclasses Kai Kara-France here and walks his way to a decision win. So give me Steve Erceg here. I think he's the side.
Kind of like the Song Kenan fight, man. I was quite shocked to see a ton of line movement in the opposite way. I don't really get the Kai Kara-France love this week. I think he's a very one-dimensional fighter as well. He's going to struggle to get on the inside of someone as clean with the footwork and boxing of Steve Erceg. I also think Steve Erceg's super live to be able to mix in some grappling here and find himself on top. I'm not sold on the defensive grappling of Kai Kara-France whatsoever. My only concern is just Steve Erceg coming off that title loss. Where is he mentally? Where's the motivation? We both just bet Cheeto Vera coming off a title shot, and he just didn't look the best, So I'm kind of wondering just kind of where Steve Erceg is. But ultimately, I think he's a much more skilled fighter, man. And I actually think he's a little bit live to submit Kai Kara-France. So I took just opted to take the money line, trying to get back to my roots where I'm good at. So I like Steve Erceg to get the job done in the co-main event as well. And finally, man, some tension in our main event. Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya. I know they squared these guys off well over a year ago. They've been trying to make this fight for a long time. Never anticipated Sean Strickland taking Israel's belt for him. But I told you earlier in this week when we were talking, I think the time off was good for Israel. There was a time where the UFC lost John Jones, they lost DC, they lost Conor McGregor. I mean, Israel kind of like carried the company on his back for the last couple of years. He was fighting 4 times a year as a champion, which is pretty rare. And I just kind of feel like he got a little burnt out. I don't want to take anything away from Sean Strickland. He is a very tricky fighter, but Israel just didn't seem like he had it. Didn't seem like he was as motivated. This time away, when you look at his physique online, he's had time to really work on his physique, to pack on some weight. I think will do him good. A little bit more power for the middleweight division to deter his opponents walking forward. I just think he's a much better fighter here, man. And Dricus du Plessis has just somehow willed out some of these wins when he's not looked the best. He's somehow catching a second win. But I think there's a night and day difference in striking on the feet here. I think one of these Dricus blitzes with his chin up is going to get him caught. I think his lead leg's going to get torn up. I am a little bit worried about his grappling. I don't think he's that technical of a grappler, but he can muscle a lot of positions and can maybe find his way on top. That's a little bit of a concern, but man, like you said earlier in the week to me in a text message, I 100% agree. When you can get one of the consensus best middleweights to ever do it at virtually a pick 'em price tag at -115 like I did, I think it's worthy of a play all day, man. So 1.5 units, Israel Adesanya -115 for me.
Stealing my lines, dude. Not about it. No, I'm just playing. I think, I agree with most everything you said. There's a little bit of Izzy glazing at first. Mm-hmm. I don't know about him carrying the company on his shoulder, but he picked up where I guess John Jones was slacking a little bit. I mean, the thing is it was the awkward style of Sean that beat Israel Adesanya the first time. And, Izzy's in a weird position where he was champion long enough that he keeps getting these title shots off of losses. And so, again, it's kind of like, where is his mindset after a loss coming into a title fight? What's his motivation at this point? He's kind of achieved everything you could want to achieve in the UFC. And I was listening to a Dricus interview earlier this week where he was saying, the UFC's pushing this stat. He'll be the first ever 3-time middleweight champion. That just means that he lost twice, like it's not necessarily a record. It's just an accomplishment that he happens to have. And so the mindset is the scariest part about breaking this fight down, because if you look at the skill set, I think Izzy is the much sharper fighter, the much more technical fighter, more championship experience. Dricus is extremely strong, and I feel like that he's much more willing to muscle down takedowns. And if he could get those early and kind of bank a round or two of ground control, I could see him get up on the scorecards, and then it gets kind of tricky. But if he can't get that takedown, like I do think that he's at a pretty significant striking disadvantage, and he'll probably, get worked. I saw some sloppy entries from Robert Whitaker that looked pretty similar to Dricus du Plessis. And the way that Izzy's just able to lean back and kind of throw his hooks, and I think that there's a lot of potential that Dricus gets caught. We've seen him caught in the past on I forget which organization it was in, but we've seen him get slept before. And I think that he's, kind of primed to do it again here. He's a little overconfident. He hasn't really been chin checked yet in the UFC, like to the point where he's somebody's gotten his respect. And I think that Izzy's sharp enough that he could probably land that shot on Dricus du Plessis. There's potential that Dricus goes out there and Izzy's like stuck in the mud, deer in the headlights. But I think that there's even more of a chance that Izzy goes out there, shows you why he's the best middleweight in the world, and just puts a little clinic on Dricus du Plessis, calls out Sean Strickland for a rematch, and solidifies himself in the history books. I do think that there's a ton of potential for that. So, yeah, Izzy's also the pick for me. Minus 115. I don't think that I could shake my head even if he loses. So give me Israel Adesanya as well.
Love to hear it, man. That's all 12 fights, 35 minutes here. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Make sure to do us a quick favor. Like the video, sub to the channel if you haven't before. And as always, we'll be back for next week.
Peace.